Hello, everyone. It's great to be back. This is Phumlani M. Majosi. Welcome to the Phumlani Majosi Show. In this show, we give you a Black conservative perspective on global and local socio-economic affairs. Joining me is the talented Gabriel McKean, who's going to fire the questions at me as we try to make sense of what's going on in the world. Gabriel?
Hello, Phumlani. Thank you so much for having me on. I think, Phumlani, let's start today with a very strange story coming out of Panyaza Lesufi, coming out of Gauteng, should I say, where the Premier Panyaza Lesufi said that they would be buying 18 hospitals in Gauteng using money from the NHI, money that does not exist yet. So, how can you buy hospitals with money that doesn't exist yet, Phumlani?
Well, it was really a very surprising thing I heard, but maybe not that surprising because I have noticed that Panyaza Lesufi is one of the NC people who are really on the left. Judging by what has come out of his mouth over the years, he's a guy who's really on who's really into left wing politics. Now he's saying he's going to buy private hospitals, right, and turn them into public hospitals. 18 private hospitals, turn them into public hospitals for the purposes of pushing ahead with their NHI, the National Health Insurance, which is basically socialized healthcare. Now, you are taking something that works better, that is more efficient, that follows all the basic rules of economics from an efficiency perspective in the private sector, and we are moving it to politicians in the government sector. We know how politicians have mismanaged things over the years. We know the inefficiencies that are created by government when government takes things over, right? There is lack of incentives, there are constraints, there are always taxpayers' money that have to pay for these things. So really, I mean, Panyaza Lesufi, him and his party are pursuing a program or a policy that will not be effective or be the best for South Africa, right? Now, look at the state of our healthcare in the public sector, Gabriel. It's a mess, right? The government should be focusing on fixing the current dire state of public healthcare. That's what they should be focused on. In fact, even the finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, has said the same thing that I'm saying, that the government instead should be focusing on fixing the current dire state of public health care, right? Instead of trying to nationalize everything and weakening the private sector and trying to take control of healthcare. So it will be a disaster, no doubt. It's not a program that South Africa needs, and financing it is going to be messy. In fact, there are people who are saying that look, it will be just an NHI name. There won't really be any financing around it. So it's not a program that will work. In fact, Gabriel, when you read Anthea Jeffrey's very great book called Countdown to Socialism, which I have right here behind me, and I've read that book by Anthea Jeffrey. That book details the problems of NHI, right? It outlines them very well, including the corruption levels, the corruption in the public healthcare sector, the problems of resources. Even though there's a lot of money that has been put into public healthcare as allocated, yet the outcomes in healthcare, they are just terrible. So I mean, even that book outlines that the problems of NHI. So it's a terrible program, and Panyaza Lesufi is entirely getting it wrong. It's not what South Africa needs. We don't need more government control. We don't need more government owning things, government taking control of supply of things. We don't need that. We must let the private sector to thrive because the efficiency is there, and of course ensure that we push for competition. We need stronger competition within the private sector because what stronger competition does is that it controls prices, and also it ensures that there's quality supply of the good or service. So that's what we need in the healthcare sector. We don't need what Panyaza is proposing. It's going to be a disaster in my perspective.
But then, why does he propose it? Is it because it's an election year and he thinks it'll win him votes? Is it a way for him to earn money off corruption? What's happening here?
Well, it's the election that's coming up. The president, he himself has said he's going to sign the NHI bill into law, and I do expect him to do that before the election. Um, it's a statist way of seeing things or of approaching our socio-economic problems, and we've seen what Panyaza Lesufi is. He's really a guy who is even willing to work with the EFF. And he has pronounced that and said, when it comes to a coalition, he will be open to working with the EFF, which is a far left socialist, Leninist political party, in South Africa. So he's willing to work with them. So he loves government control. We have seen the stories that have come out over the years of Lesufi when he was in education in Gauteng, really the huge interventions, even in education, he was making at the time. Now he's premier now, and he's pushing that agenda of the NHI. And it's politicians who love control, who love controlling people, who love controlling services, and they believe that government is the way to do it. So Panyaza Lesufi is one of those people. And in fact, he even did say in his speech that Ramaphosa must push ahead and sign the NHI bill because he would love to see more government control, which is not what we need in this country. This country needs smaller government. It doesn't need bigger government, right?
Well, talking about the size of government, I think that that's going to be on everyone's mind with the budget that's being announced today, this Wednesday afternoon. And let's start with maybe some more criticisms of the budget. So, P- Pumlani, what budget items really need to go to solve South Africa's problems?
Oh, that's a very easy one, Gabriel. The civil service wage, right, or the wage bill, the public sector wage bill. It's massive, right? It's really massive. It's one of those things that we really need to address. Because, for example, let me give you something I'm reading here, which is very, very interesting. When it comes to South Africa spends more on its public servants, right, as a proportion of total government expenditure than Australia, Canada, the US, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. Um, you know, so I mean, these are countries that are more of what? These are countries that are usually seen as welfare states, right? Yet we are spending more, on this on our public servants. Yet we are not really there. We are not seen as a civil, as a welfare state, as those Nordic countries in Europe. So yet, I mean, the way we are, I mean, now compare that to productivity levels. Our productivity levels are not good. They are a shocker when you look at them. Um, so I mean, it's one of those things that are really taking a huge impact, are making a huge impact to our to our expenditure and to our fiscal situation as well. And what happened today is we saw that given these very difficult financial constraints we are facing, the government tapped into the 150 billion rands foreign reserves, right, or forex reserves, foreign exchange reserves. Why? Because they said we're not going to raise taxes. We will keep them. We're not going to raise taxes. It's a few months before the election. They didn't want to touch that, and then they went on to rather tap on the 150 billion rand forex reserves to try and counter these issues that we are facing, right, with respect to our fiscal situation. And also here's one thing that we need to always think about as South Africans. The key here is getting stronger economic growth. Now, the minister projects that there will be between now and 2026 or so, between now and 2026, the average growth will be 1.6%. This is average economic growth. Now, contrast that to the fact that we need 5%, at least 5% economic growth to drastically reduce the current shocking unemployment rates. In fact, unemployment rates they rose this week in South Africa, right? And to address these very shocking high unemployment rates, you need to have stronger economic growth at plus 5%, right? That's at least according to the chief economist of Rand Merchant Bank, Isaiah Mhlanga, that those are the growth levels we need to reduce the current shocking unemployment rates. So I mean, it's a challenge that we are facing. That our fiscal situation is really a drag. Though I must say that the government is trying to limit its spending now. We can see the pressures of of the pressures that come with an economy that is challenged with by blackouts, an economy challenged by transnet problems, that the growth that the expenditure is being suppressed. We can see that under Enoch Godongwana. So I mean, but the civil service bill, or the public sector wage bill, is something that is really taking is straining our finances. You could also point to the debt service costs that are very, very high, and that is also going to be a serious problem for us, and that needs to be addressed, because we cannot keep on accumulating debt, and those debt costs will need to be paid by South Africans. So I think those few things stood out for me with respect to the budget. That we are constrained fiscally, and we have to make tougher decisions. Hence, that's why it tapped into the 150 billion rand forex reserves.
One of the victims of the constraints being put on the budget has been, for a very long time now, the South African National Defence Force. And I think let's end our discussion today, Pumlani, with touching on what effects the constraints have had on the South African National Defence Force and what has caused the loss of capacity given the lack of budget.
Look, Gabriel, it's not about the lack of budget with respect to SANDF. It's not about that. It's about the fact that you have a budget where 80% of it goes into salaries, right? So now you tell me that means we are not investing in capacity of the SANDF. We are putting the money into salaries of the people, of the staff members there, and that is a problem. We have our troops stationed in Mozambique. They are also stationed in DR Congo as well, trying to contribute to making peace there. And guess what? In a way, they're under resourced. They lack some very sophisticated, even helicopters that they need for combat. So I mean, it's a situation where there is also that mismanagement, that where people are not thinking the right way, right? You do get the budget, but at least 80% of it goes to salaries, right? Where is investment, right, into our military? Because remember, a military is very important, Gabriel. It not only does it protect us against foreign enemies. It's right now it's being used to counter. We have challenges with Zamazamas. Our military is used to address that. It's also used to protection of trucks along important routes, protection of ESCOM infrastructure as well, and also border control. So our military is used for all those things, and we need to have the capabilities. We need to invest in the capacity and the capabilities if we want to be effective as an army, right? Um, if we have 80% of the budget going into salaries, that is that is greatly concerning. So there has to be a shift in thinking and how the money is spent, in the priorities within the military. I think that's very important, and it's the only way we can win as a nation. That is very, very critical.
Well, Pumlani, on that unfortunately depressing note, I'm out of questions for you. Thank you so much again for having me on.
Thanks, Gabriel. Thanks for coming by. Thanks, everyone, for being on my show. Remember, I'm on my website, pumlanimachozi.com. I'm also on X, at Phumlani M. Machozi. I'm also on Facebook as well, at Phumlani M. Machozi. You'll find my Facebook page as well. For those who are on LinkedIn, professionals, I am Phumlani M. Machozi there. Thanks for joining us. We'll chat next time.